The idea of the American trucker as a symbol of freedom and independence is very common in stories and culture, but behind this picture is a tough truth. The trucking industry is set up to wear drivers down, pushing them hard before moving on to the next person. This is not a mistake, but how the system is built to work. Many experienced drivers talk about the good old days when pay was better, they were treated with more respect, and working conditions gave them more freedom. While there is some truth to these stories, they describe a past that new drivers today are unlikely to ever see. The trucking world now is very different, full of challenges that make those better times almost impossible for new drivers to reach. The per mile pay system is not a fair method of compensation. It is calculated to underpay drivers by compensating only for miles driven. Carriers shift the entire burden of efficiency onto drivers, while capturing all the profit from unpaid labor. Time spent waiting at docks, completing inspections, handling paperwork, or dealing with delays is not compensated. And this means drivers routinely give their time and energy for free, while the financial benefits go entirely to the company. In practice, this amounts to free labor for large carriers when all unpaid hours are taken into account. A driver's actual hourly wage often falls very well below minimum wage, despite the physical demands, tight schedules, and constant pressures the job requires. Stark, simple on-screen graphics can make this clear. Once waiting time, inspections, and paperwork are counted, a driver's real hourly rate drops sharply, exposing the gap between what is earned and what is deserved. Consider a driver who works 5 days a week in a full capacity. Each day, they reach the legal 14-hour on-duty limit, with 11 of those hours spent driving the maximum allowed in the US, at an average speed of 50 miles per hour that equals to 550 miles a day, or 2,750 miles for the week. At a rate of 70 cents per mile, this produces $385 per day or $1,925 for the week. On paper, that comes out to $27.50 per hour for 70 hours of official on-duty time. However, the hours no one counts, fueling, waiting at the docks, and completing paperwork adds up quickly. An extra 2 hours a day is another 10 hours a week of work without payment, which lowers the real hourly rate to just over $24. In most other industries, working 80 hours a week would trigger overtime after 40 hours. In trucking, those extra 40 hours do not increase your pay. They reduce your effective hourly rate. Even this is hopeful. If daily miles drop to 400, that's $280 a day, or $1,400 a week. With 80 total hours worked, the effective hourly rate falls to $17.50, while the driver's away from home all week and covering expenses on the road, and that is why the turnover in trucking remains high. Many drivers experience paychecks far worse than these examples. The industry's own pay structure makes sure that long hours often mean lower pay and not higher earnings. If you've experienced weeks like these or worse, drop your story in the comments. Let's show the industry what it's really like out here on the road. And if you find this breakdown eye-opening, please like it so more drivers can see it. On paper, lease purchase programs in trucking sound like an opportunity. Companies promote them with promises of no money down, low weekly payments, a clear path to ownership. The message is simple and clear. In 3 to 5 years, you could be driving a truck that is fully yours. They present it as a fast track to independence, control, and financial success. The reality is far different. In many cases, the truck price is inflated well beyond market value. Weekly deductions are steep, cutting deep into take-home pay. The contract itself is written to protect the company at every turn, not the driver. Instead of true independence, participants often find themselves tied to the company's freight, bound by its rates and restricted by its rules. The dream of ownership becomes a costly commitment that benefits the carrier far more than the driver. Meanwhile, lease purchase programs have hidden problems that can leave drivers broke. One of the most common is the high truck price, where the final buyout cost can be tens of thousands of dollars above the truck's real value. Forced dispatch is another issue, taking away the driver's ability to choose loads and forcing them to take whatever freight the company gives, even when the rates are bad. Maintenance trucks are also a heavy burden, with drivers paying for all repairs, often on older trucks, while losing valuable driving time in the process. And in many deals, there's no real promise of ownership. Missing just one payment can mean losing both the truck and every dollar already paid. And finally, balloon payments at the end of the deal can range from $20,000 to $40,000, an amount most drivers cannot pay without taking on more debt. These traps turn what looks like a path to independence into a money risk that helps the company far more than the driver. The risk of lease purchase programs are not just theory, they show up in the lived experience of drivers across the country. One driver paid into a lease for 3 years only to become ill and miss 2 weeks of work. The company repossessed the truck, leaving him with no refund and no equity for the years he had invested. Another driver, for example, discovered too late that his $1 buyout truck had earned more than 900,000 miles and suffered constant breakdowns. The repair bills quickly added up, often costing more than his weekly settlements. A team driver reported that his guaranteed revenue was based on best-case load projections. When freight slowed, his deductions outweighed his earnings, and his paychecks came out negative. It's these stories that highlight the financial and personal risks hidden behind the sales pitch of truck ownership. Meanwhile, lease purchase programs are not structured to ensure a driver's success. They're actually built to secure a steady stream of low-cost labor for the carrier without the expense of providing benefits. One key advantage for the company is that the arrangement carries no risk at all. If a driver is unable to complete the lease, the carrier simply hands the same truck to the next participant and continues collecting payments. And these agreements also guarantee revenue for the company because lease payments are deducted directly from the driver's settlement before the driver receives any pay. High turnover can be even more profitable. When one driver fails, the truck is leased again, sometimes to multiple drivers over its lifetime, generating far more income for the carrier than the vehicle is worth. One truck, 3 failed drivers, triple the profit. Before committing to a lease purchase agreement, it is essential to recognize warning signs that may indicate an unfair or risky arrangement. One major concern is the absence of an early buyout option. Without this, you are locked into the contract for years, even if you are financially able to pay off the truck sooner. Another red flag is the lack of guaranteed freight rates. Without a set rate, your earnings fluctuate entirely based on the company's load availability and pricing decisions, leaving your income vulnerable to market changes. Drivers should also be cautious of one-sided maintenance programs. In many agreements, the driver is responsible for all repair costs, but the carrier decides where and how the work is done, potentially inflating expenses. And finally, repossession clauses deserve close attention. Some contracts allow the company to repossess the truck after a single missed payment, resulting in the loss of both the vehicle and all prior investments. Recognizing these clauses before signing can help prevent costly mistakes and long-term setbacks. The safest part to true ownership is to save diligently and purchase a vehicle outright or work with a reputable independent lender. While lease purchase programs may appear to offer a faster route, they often lead drivers into long-term debt rather than financial independence. For most, these arrangements are less a stepping stone and more a costly setback. Before making any commitment, take time to research the fair market value of trucks similar to the one you are considering. Speak directly with former drivers who have worked for the company to learn about their expenses, and more importantly, have any contract reviewed by a qualified attorney who understands transportation law. These steps can help protect you from predatory agreements and set you on a path towards sustainable ownership. However, lease purchase in trucking is a double-edged sword. The programs can be highly profitable for the carriers and for drivers. However, they often become financial traps that are difficult, if not impossible, to escape. The promise of ownership may be appealing, but without caution and due diligence, the dream could quickly turn into a costly and exhausting reality. Protect yourself by seeking transparent agreements, verifying every detail, and refusing terms that place all the risk on you. Protect drivers and expose the scam. ELDs are often promoted as tools to enhance safety on the road. However, their primary function has shifted towards corporate surveillance. These devices monitor every movement a driver makes, stripping away personal autonomy and reducing drivers to just small, replaceable parts within a vast logistics system. Instead of giving drivers more freedom, ELDs put strict rules in place that reduce their ability to adjust and make them feel more pressure to stick to fixed schedules. Government rules and how long drivers can work are often made with the help of industry lobbyists who care more about big companies than the drivers themselves. Required breaks and strict time limits are said to keep drivers safe, but they're also used to control how drivers work and how much lower they can earn. These rules limit drivers' chances to work more hours and make more money, which helps companies at the driver's expense. The rise of self-driving trucks is the biggest betrayal in this system. The trucking industry seems willing to use up its current drivers, getting as much work from them as possible before replacing them with machines. And this change means drivers could lose their jobs in the future, making the tough working conditions and strict rules they face now feel even more unfair. In the trucking industry, high turnover is not just an unfortunate consequence, it is an intentional tactic. By constantly hiring new drivers, companies avoid paying the extra costs that come with keeping experienced drivers, like better pay, benefits, and long-term contracts. This way of working treats drivers like easily replaceable parts instead of skilled employees or workers whose knowledge is important for safe and smooth operations. Constant hiring helps big trucking companies much more than keeping experienced drivers does. New drivers who often really want to get into the job are more likely to accept lower pay, longer hours, and tougher working conditions than drivers with more experience. By always bringing in new, less experienced workers, companies make sure they have enough drivers while avoiding having to deal with workers who have more rights because of their experience. Now, this cycle hurts drivers a lot. Many drivers give up early because the non-stop schedules and money problems wear them down. Wages don't go up, not because the work is easier, but because the system is set up to keep pay low. And in the end, this approach helps companies make money but hurts the drivers who keep the industry running. The widely repeated story of a driver shortage is often used as a tool to lower industry standards and boost company profits. While it may not seem like there are enough truck drivers, the reality is far more complex. There are plenty of qualified drivers available, but there are just not enough quality jobs that offer pay, reasonable hours, and safe working conditions. The false narrative allows companies to justify cutting corners, including offering inadequate training and underpaying drivers. By claiming a shortage, companies argue that any driver is better than no driver, leading to unsafe practices and a workforce that is often unprepared for the demands of the job. And this approach benefits companies beneficially but comes at the cost of driver safety and well-being. In truth, the driver shortage story hides deeper problems within the industry. Until companies address the need for better jobs and improved working conditions, the cycle of turnover, underpayment, and unsafe practices will continue to harm drivers and the industry as a whole. The physical health of many truck drivers suffer greatly due to the tough and demanding conditions they face every day. Long hours spent sitting behind the wheel, irregular sleep patterns, and limited access to healthy food and constant stress take a serious toll on their bodies. And over time, this hard lifestyle leads to chronic pain, fatigue, and serious medical issues. All direct results of a work environment that puts profits ahead of a driver's well-being. Mental health is equally affected, with rates of depression, anxiety, and suicide alarmingly very high among drivers. The loneliness of long periods on the road, combined with non-stop pressure to meet tight schedules and financial burdens, creates a perfect battle for emotional distress. Many drivers suffer quietly, unable to find enough support as the weight of their struggles grow heavier with each mile. Beyond the individual, the demands of the industry also take a heavy toll on the family life. Long time away from home steals precious moments and weakens relationships, leaving drivers disconnected from loved ones. For many, the only constant companions become their trucks and the mounting debt they carry. This deep loss affects not only the drivers but also the families and communities that depend on them. The challenges faced by truck drivers are not accidental flaws or temporary setbacks. They are built into the very structure of the industry, and this system is fundamentally broken and operates in a way that works against the very interest of the drivers it depends on. Recognizing this reality is the first step towards meaningful change. Drivers must come together to demand fair contracts, better working conditions, and respect for their rights. Organizing as a united force is essential to challenge the practices that exploit them. Sharing their stories and experiences is a powerful way to shine a light on the harsh truths hidden under the surface of the industry. And this is a call to action for all drivers. It is time to stand up, speak out, and fight for the truth they deserve. Change will only happen when the voices of those who keep the country moving refuse to be ignored. Together, drivers can expose the system's failures and push for a trucking industry that values and supports the people at its heart.